You are listening to an official Fighting Irish podcast presented by Resonado, the official sound partner of Notre Dame Athletics. To subscribe to other great Fighting Irish audio content, including press conferences, coaches' shows, and the official Notre Dame football postgame show, go to und.com/podcasts or search your favorite podcast directory for Notre Dame Athletics.
Do you relish and enjoy the spotlight? Do you want the bright lights? Do you want to be on that kind of stage? Some don't. Some can be the best players in the country, but shy away from that kind of bright lights and the opportunity to be, in some instances, called out on a national stage. So I think how we've handled it more importantly is find those guys that are looking for that grand stage, and that's how we have been successful in having guys that are maybe built a little differently.
I'm more interested in the recruiting process when we talk about 3-star, 4-star, 5-star. I'll be honest, I'm pretty, I don't want to say recruiting ignorant, but I don't follow the process. So for you as the head football coach, tell me, just when you first engage an athlete, when they're coming up through high school, what's the first time you're going to engage with them, and talk me through all the steps you go through to vetting them, and then until you offer, and then they commit and eventually sign with Notre Dame. What's that process like for you?
Well, it starts with, certainly, the ability to have a staff that can put them through, two segments of what we consider our vetting process. One segment would be evaluating their skill set, their ability to play here at Notre Dame. That doesn't take quite as long, though we have, part of our recruiting staff is focused solely on that. And so with the advent of streaming video, that's made it a whole lot easier. When I started in this business, it would not be uncommon to have hundreds of VHS tapes sitting on your desk and in your office, and but even before that, and I'm really dating myself, 16 millimeter film.
Okay, yeah, we're going way back.
Yeah, we're going way back. Cans of film when I started in my office. Evaluating. That is now at the point now where you're going to online and pulling up video and evaluating. So one part of our recruiting office is strictly evaluating prospects based upon their physical ability and their fit from that standpoint. The other half of our recruiting office is evaluating their academic fit and their cultural fit here at Notre Dame. And so it takes more than just being able to run fast, be powerful, catch the football. For you to make what we call our board, get your name up on the board, you've got to be able to be vetted in both of those areas. And so that begins the process for us, just the name. Mm-hmm. But he's already gone through two ends of that vetting process. For us now to begin, the in-person evaluation. Now, this all happens without the head coach, because the head coach is limited to being on the road. Mm-hmm. And I think, if you really think about it, if the head coach is on the road for all these things, it puts us in harm's way during what are considered contact times to see a recruit, and evaluation times, which essentially mean non-contact times.
Right.
Now we're left with assistant coaches going out, evaluating, checking on their academics again, making sure that they are a fit by interviewing others that know the young man, and generally speaking, evaluating them in another sport. Because very rarely do we get a chance to see them play football, because we're in our own season. So that kind of starts the initial recruiting process and evaluation.
And in general, what age is that? for most of these guys? What year in high school?
Oh, this is generally their sophomore year.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we're tapping a little bit into that freshman year, but man, it's hard to bring a young man up and evaluate his academic potential for success when he's taking fundamentals of math. I mean, he doesn't even know what a square root is. So it really is generally speaking, we're starting at that sophomore year.
With the talent evaluation, you mentioned you have to get past kind of the baseline and be a certain level of football player. But high school football is so different across the board, right? Whether you're in state X playing at 1A or state Y playing at 6A, you could see all kinds of different football. Is it camps you guys are trying to kind of use as that standardized test? How do you guys determine, hey, this guy's putting up huge numbers and looks great against this competition?
Yeah.
We gotta standardize this somehow.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what we're trying to find is as much information that can validate some of the measurables. And so what are measurables? Certainly speed, strength, and football IQ. So those measurables can be found in, like I mentioned earlier, other sports, maybe a track time, a verifiable track time. Maybe it is in a camp where they're going up against other talented players where you can see them handle themselves. So I think you're looking for other quantifiable measuring marks if it's football that you're not sure of the caliber of play. I think there's many levels of high school football where you can get matched up and go, all right, that guy can play at any level. But then you're right, there are some certain instances where you've got to try to find some other measurables to find out, is this guy really have the tools necessary?
You mentioned the difference in how you guys now can look at film. It's much more available. You're not cutting 16 millimeter film, like you said. And the way recruiting is covered now, there's rankings everywhere. I would imagine there's a tendency to almost have groupthink. I mean, you can look at certain websites and say, hey, here's the top 300 guys. Let's go after these people. Mm-hmm. Is there a temptation? Do you and your staff have to say, hey, we can't get caught up in all these rankings and follow where everyone's going. Right. We got to do this on our own. And how do you then maybe look at what others are saying? Like you said, someone's matching up against someone that's ranked at this level. Do you have to resist the urge to look at the rankings and let that educate your own thinking on all these players?
Yeah, I mean, look, you're compiling early on in this process a lot of numbers that are going to get whittled down. So you want to start with more than less. So yeah, we're taking all the information out there. We're taking all the lists. We're taking all of the pre-evaluated as well, and then we'll use our own kind of sense to begin the paring down, because again, they've got to go through another kind of wash, if you will, and one of them is a cultural wash and one of them is an academic wash. So we'd rather start with more information and more potential players. So we're not going to say we're not going to take the ESPN top 300 because we don't see it through the same prism. We'll take all that information and then we'll begin our own evaluation of those players.
So I want to talk more about when you first engage with a young athlete that's maybe wants to play at Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. What's the typically first time you interact with them, and then when you go meet with them and their family, what are you looking for? What do you try to identify as the things that are going to determine, hey, this is someone we want to be part of our program? I mean, what is your mindset going into those visits?
Well, they're generally two entirely different interactions.
Okay.
One is where they have come on campus, either paying for it on their own, which would be an unofficial visit. So they're still in the fact-finding, if you will, still a number of schools that they're visiting. There's maybe we're early in this process. We just had a junior day this weekend where those are all quote-unquote unofficial visits because we don't pay for them. So they still have a lot of schools that are in the mix. So that visit, for me, is a lot more, hi, I'm Brian Kelly. Let me tell you a little bit about myself.
Right.
Whereas the next time I get with that family, if in fact I do, I'm trying to close.
Oh, okay.
You know,
ABC.
It's really about closing and talking about, you know, all the things that we have shown you, why you fit and why we believe you choosing Notre Dame is the best decision you can make for your future. So there are really two different interactions, and it's generally just those two, or there might be a third, but again, it's on this campus, and they've come up again for another unofficial visit, and that's not uncommon, but it might be a little bit different because now it's not, hi, I'm Brian Kelly, it's, hey, let me show you how we do things here on a day-to-day basis. So each one of them has a little bit of a different interaction, so I have to be in tune and aware of, you know, where are they in this process as they're again going through their decision making.
I think one of the better slogans you guys have here is graduating champions. I think that when I think about what you guys are trying to stand for and what you do stand for is that you're going to take people through this process, get them a Notre Dame degree, and also pursue championships on the field. But when you just said, when you're trying to close somebody, I imagine everyone's desires are a little bit different. I think the average person thinks that a recruit, they want to go to the NFL. And maybe everyone's dream is to, but there's a vast array of things you guys can provide. When you're trying to close, as you said, and you're trying to present to every recruit, how much is it personalized to, hey, I know this is what you want to accomplish, and we're going to make that happen if you come here?
Absolutely. It's all, look, every one of these decisions is personal because it's their son. It's the mom and dad that have raised them. It's the mom that's raised them. It's the dad that's raised them. It's the grandparents that's raised them. Yeah. So it's all personal. So, you know, when we talk about, you know, what our mission is in graduating champions, you know, it has, you know, clearly, you know, in its words, you know, getting a degree and winning a national championship. But in its meaning, it also is, we're going to finish the job that you started as parents. That we're going to develop a man here, and we're going to, when he leaves here, have a better version of himself, better husband, better father, better citizen. That's what we're graduating when he comes to Notre Dame. And he's going to be a champion. You know, he's going to be successful in the community in whatever he does. So, you know, that meaning, you know, certainly has the vision of crossing the stage and getting your degree and raising a, you know, a championship trophy, but it also has a meaning of, this is what we'll do for your son if he chooses to come to Notre Dame.
Do you think being a parent makes that conversation easier? The fact that you know what a parent's going through and you can communicate on a level that someone that might not have experienced raising someone into the world.
Yeah, absolutely, because you know what they're looking for. We're looking for the same things. You know, we want our son or daughter to be around, you know, similar people that have similar goals and dreams, that, you know, they're being challenged on a day-to-day basis, that, you know, they're going to assimilate into an environment that, you know, fosters those same kind of things. So absolutely, that helps.
Let me ask you about 85 scholarships, and you're going to have a class of 20 plus people each year. The fact of the matter is that some people are going to get to Notre Dame, they're going to be recruited to play football, and they're not going to have the football career at Notre Dame that they hoped. It's just the way, it's a numbers game. It's the way things play out. How do you manage that and manage expectations? When you're recruiting someone, I think there's a temptation probably from coaches, like, we're going to tell them we can give you the world. How do you entice them and get them to commit to Notre Dame and let them know that they can achieve their football goals here, when the fact of the matter is that for every single one of them, they might not reach the football potential that they dream about?
Yeah, we never talk about not, you know, we talk about what you can. And if for some reason we decided that we weren't going to play football ever again here at Notre Dame, how would you be for the rest of your life with a degree from Notre Dame? And so I think it's pretty simple in the sense that, you know, when we're recruiting, we only want to recruit those that want to be challenged both in the classroom and on the football field. And in this classroom here at Notre Dame, you're challenged by 5-star academics every day. And not everybody in there is going to have success every day. Same thing on the football field. You know, there's 5 stars on the football field, but are you willing to commit yourself to that challenge every day? So that's what we're looking for. Not that, you know, we talk in terms of, some guy's not going to be successful. What we're more interested in, are you up for the challenge? And when you get knocked down, are you ready to get back up and take on the challenge again?
Something I think is obviously unique about Notre Dame is the exposure it gets, whether it's, it seems like every game's on broadcast network TV. Mm-hmm. Obviously every home game is with NBC. I know this year they covered it, with multiple broadcasts for that BC game, which is unlike anything else going on in the country. I mean, when you're talking to players and families, that has to be something you're emphasizing, that you're going to see your son every weekend. I don't care where they're playing, whether it's in South Bend or elsewhere. We have the best broadcast coverage, the most broad broadcast coverage in the country. I mean, that has to be something you guys hammer home. Yeah,
so what we're looking for in that sense is, certainly we talk about the NBC contract and we talk about being on national television, but I think what we're looking for more than anything else is, do you relish and enjoy the spotlight? Do you want the bright lights? Do you want to be on that kind of stage? Some don't. Some can be the best players in the country, but shy away from that kind of bright lights and the opportunity to be, in some instances, called out on a national stage. So I think how we've handled it more importantly is find those guys that are looking for that grand stage. And that's how we have been successful, and having guys that are maybe built a little differently in that sense.
How do you identify that? How can you identify if someone wants those bright lights? Because a lot of people can say it.
Sure.
Yeah. How do you identify that?
Well, again, in this recruiting process, it's important to gain as much information as possible from outside the circle. Those that have played against the individual, those that have observed him from afar, opposing coaches, talking to others that are not maybe in his inner circle, help give you a really good vantage point if this is a kind of guy that really enjoys the spotlight.
We talked about the academic rigors and the way you can set yourself up for success academically, but the fact of the matter is Notre Dame's got an amazing tradition in the NFL. I know you're at the Senior Bowl. You got 4 guys that played in it, 6 guys invited, 2 guys just played in the Super Bowl. You've seen NFL players come through this building throughout your time here. I mean, how valuable is it to have that kind of NFL connection that you can lean on and say, hey, these are the guys. I saw them go from X to Y in their 4 years here, and that's why they're at the highest level. I mean, do you hit on that? Do you show them the exact examples you can be like this player in the NFL?
Well, absolutely. Part of the recruiting process is, we want players and student athletes here that have aspirations to play in the NFL. We want them to get a degree from Notre Dame. We want them to feel as though the next step for them after winning a national championship here is to win or play in a Super Bowl. And so we're looking for those guys that are, challenging themselves that way. And I think we've got 43 active players right now that played for me that are in the NFL. So it's a pretty reasonable assumption that if that's what you want, you'll be given that opportunity, to pursue that. If you don't, that's great too. Mm-hmm. We got a lot of guys in Silicon Valley and a ton of guys on Wall Street and in med school and in law school. So, you get great choices and great options. And one of them is, if you want to play in the NFL, there's a great pathway here too.
I wanted to actually ask you about that because we can probably go off and list all the NFL players that have had great careers. But now that you've been here, I think it's, is this year 11?
Going on year 11. I don't know when they count year 11. I think you have to get through it.
Okay.
To count it.
So 10 plus. We'll call it 10 plus.
Right.
Yeah.
10 going on 11.
Who are maybe 1 or 2 names that stick out as people that you've seen that have gone on to have those careers outside of football that maybe you're still in touch with or just really proud of the life they've carved out for themselves outside of football that is a testament to what Notre Dame can provide them if the NFL is not the route they want to end up pursuing?
Well, I mean, you probably start with the guys that, in no way, shape, or fashion did you think that they were going to be NFL players. It starts with probably, some of our walk-ons that you're most proud of. They come here to Notre Dame and they're paying their own way, and then they impact your program in such a positive way, and then there's some of your most successful, businessmen, CEOs, and leaders. And I think of, the Salvi brothers from Chicago, that played for us that, very, very successful. There's so many of those young men that, I probably could go on for 20 minutes about, just how they've impacted the program, not as captains or, maybe they caught 20, balls in a couple of games, but were walk-ons that impacted the program inside out. And now you can see how they're so successful, in the community.
When you're going through this recruiting process, I imagine, you guys covered up the board, which I appreciate. I don't want any of the inside intel, but I saw how many people are on the board. You guys are looking at all kinds of players. The people on campus that maybe aren't inside football, whether it's academic services, admissions, how valuable are their contributions to helping you guys navigate that process? I'm sure compliance is involved, and there's all kinds of people that are helping Notre Dame football do this the right way and help get the right people and help them with that transition process too. How valuable is that support that you guys get from the university?
Yeah, I think it starts obviously with having a pretty good track record over the past 10 years of recruiting to the traits of Notre Dame. And so bringing football players here that represent Notre Dame in a positive way has helped us build a strong relationship with our admissions office. Obviously there's always going to be those exceptions where we believe somebody can do it and they feel like the numbers that they have that this young man can't make it. But those have been the exception to the rule.
Sure.
So we've had a great relationship with admissions in terms of giving players, student athletes, an opportunity here, and they've done well. They've graduated. Jalen Smith is a great example. Came out of Fort Wayne. He did not have the highest score on the ACT coming out, but has his degree and is obviously one of the strongest brands in the NFL and playing in the Pro Bowl. So I think that those are part of building a strong relationship with players that have done well and represent Notre Dame in a positive way. So I would start with admissions, and then I would probably work to our academic support staff when they get here. The layers that they build for our players to succeed here, from having the support from tutors to the opportunity to be counseled when it comes to their scheduling and how they can graduate on time has been invaluable.
The last thing I want to hit on is just the early signing period. This is the third year you guys have had it in place. It seems like it's been a positive for you guys because you've gotten a lot of people to commit right away. How is that? Maybe, I know you're on a trip, it sounds like a couple weeks ago, doing recruiting for next class that maybe you wouldn't have been able to do the same way in the past if you're trying to lock guys down in February. Right. Just what have been the benefits? Why do you guys seem to, I think, like this new early signing period?
We've had very few decommits in my time here. We've had them. But if you're recruiting the right way and you're transparent in what you do in terms of here's who we are, this is what we're about, this is what you're going to get if you shop down this aisle, then this is much more about choosing Notre Dame than being pulled to come to Notre Dame, emotionally. This is a decision. This is a choice that you make. So that means you're really committed to your decision. And by having a December signing date, it allows us to get all of those committed that have always been committed signed. What had happened in years past is even though they were committed, they were being picked at all the way up till February. And that committed decision can get picked at very easily when you are a small Catholic university in South Bend. And I'll give you an example. Okay. Jerry Tillery, who we all know Jerry very well, from Shreveport, Louisiana, for the month of December, January, and February, received the weather report every single day from a school down south, the South Bend weather report every single day until he signed in February. So little things like that. So we'd always have to go around the country and quote unquote, reaffirm their commitment. By having this early signing day, we don't have to worry about weather reports. Though I would love to start sending weather reports about South Bend now because it's in the 50s here.
Oh, it's been great. It's been a great week.
It was better than Texas
the golf last
in some
week.
instances. Yeah. But so this early signing day, takes away all of that, picking at your recruits, and then subsequently allows me to work on the next year.
Right.
So there seems to be this narrative out there that I'm working harder this year. I'm working at the same pace that I've always been working. It's just that I am touching base with those that are communicating more with me being in their presence than ever before, because they're in the midst of being recruited. Mm-hmm. Whereas all those other guys were committed, nobody cared about them anymore. They're already committed, right? So it looked like Kelly's not doing anything. Well, he was just touching base with all the kids that he's committed, which you need to because you can't afford to lose them. Now, I'm the hardest working head coach ever at Notre Dame.
You're grinding.
Because I'm grinding. But if you look at my schedule, it's probably the same or less than it's ever been in years past.
I love narratives. What narrative should we start spinning? You're the hardest working coach in South Bend, and this is the first time you've ever worked this hard in recruiting, right?
No, I think the narrative is that, this is all about what you want to believe.
Oh, okay. You go get the news from where you want to get it,
exactly.
And they'll tell you what you want to hear.
Now, if you come to this podcast,
oh,
you'll get the right information.
I like that.
If you want to listen to other things, you may not get the right information.
That's a good tagline. If you come to this podcast, you'll get the right information. We have a motto.
You might as well come to where we're getting it firsthand instead of listening to those that think they have it firsthand.
Mm-hmm. Last thing, just on the recruiting, it sounds like you have some opinions, which I love. What is maybe the one thing, because they made the change with the early signing day, which you like. What is maybe something that's still out there in recruiting that if you could change it, you would say, hey, I'm going to make this decision. It's going to make it better. Maybe not just for Notre Dame, although that was an instance where we can sign them earlier so weather reports aren't being sent around. Yeah. But what is the thing you'd say, hey, this would be better for maybe Notre Dame, but college football as a whole if we did this one thing? We got to change this one thing in recruiting.
Well, the head coach is on the road in this evaluation period, from when the dead period opens back up in January, so this 2-week period. I was on the road, but it's an evaluation period, so I can't have contact. So you're allowed what is called a bump. Now, a bump means you can bump into the prospective student athlete, shake their hand, say hello, a couple of niceties, and you got to move on. Well, most don't want that when you go into the high school. They would like you to sit down with the recruit, spend time with them. I choose not to. I want to follow the NCAA rules, but it's very difficult when you put the head coach in that position, right, that it's a bump and it's not being followed across the board. I would like them to change that when the head coach can go on the road, that they're allowed contact.
Yeah.
I think that that's the best way to do it because the head coach is not allowed on the road very often. When he is on the road, you should let the head coach contact that individual, get a sense and feel for that person, so you can start making some decisions as to if he's the right fit for your university.
Why is that rule in place? I mean, what's the reasoning behind limiting your contact on the road? If we're trying to help,
because it's not associated strictly with the head coach.
Okay.
It's the assistant coaches that could then be in the schools and evaluate and then go into a contact period with every single kid that they see and create a different scenario. They could keep kids there for 2 hours out of class, all those kinds of things. So it would require, legislation to put it towards just the head coach. When the head coach is on the road in an evaluation period, he's allowed a contact with the prospective student athlete.
All right, I'll send it to Mark Emmert. See what he says.
See what he says.
Coach, thanks.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, thank you.
I just want to talk about the recruiting process because I honestly don't know a ton about it. I just learned a lot, honestly, from Coach Kelly. Mm-hmm. You, in your role, are very involved in recruiting. So just explain to me throughout the year what your day-to-day looks like as it relates to recruiting and identifying the players that you guys are going to, possibly bring on campus and make a part of this program? What does that look like as you try to identify classes?
Sure. Well, there's an old saying, recruiting's like shaving. If you don't do it for a couple of days, people are going to notice. I mean, it's funny. In the NFL calendar, there are certain times of year that are, it's predicated that, all right, this is just all evaluation right now. And the recruiting process is never ending. It literally never stops. Well, you are wrapping up one class, you are probably 25% into the next class. And it's cyclical, and unfortunately, it's moving faster and faster, where we're looking at guys that just finished ninth grade and trying to figure out whether or not they can project. There are a couple phases to the recruiting process, identification and evaluation. And there's a trick to that. Some guys are better evaluators than others. The ability to look at a 16, 17-year-old and understand you're not seeing the finished product, and you have to project, and understanding all of those things. And then as you and there are people that are not great evaluators but are terrific recruiters. So now, all right, we've decided who it is that we want. Now we got to go get them. And that is relationship building. And that is the ability to communicate and listen, ask the right questions, and listen to the answers, so that we are economical with our time, and we are being smart where we invest all of our effort, frankly, where we invest our finances in terms of travel and things like that, to make sure that we are on the guys that we can get. That if a guy says, hey, I'm really concerned about weather, we ought not waste all our time on that guy. So there's a trick to this. There's a process of evaluation. There is a process of addressing needs within your own program, the ability to project the player. And then once you decide who it is that you want, now we shift gears completely to the what's important to you, and then does Notre Dame match what you're looking for, and how can we build that relationship and try and get it to the point where that young person's picking us. It's not the NFL. We can't draft them.
Right.
You know, we have to get them to pick us. And as you look at your staff, there are guys that have strengths in one side or the other, and then there are guys that can do both. And what we try to do is be collaborative so that we are making up for each other's weaknesses.
That's fascinating to hear about how there's kind of two trades to recruiting. I never thought of it that way. You talked a lot about projecting, both physically, football skills, and then it sounds like even personality, right? A 16-year-old could say, I don't like weather, but they might not really know what that's like until they get to South Bend.
Sure.
Right? How tough is it when you're engaging with 16-year-olds both to project their physical skills, but then also project the kind of person they're going to be? I remember what I was like when I was 16. I was nothing like that when I was 21. So how do you go through that process, and what mindset do you have to put yourself in to properly project?
I think we have to lean on experience. I think, one time I watched some recruiting film with my wife, Laura, and she said, who are we looking at? And after 12 plays, she's like, oh, that's the guy we're looking at. Like the no-brainers.
Right.
I mean, they're not hard to pick out on film. It's, can you look at Jeremiah Owusu as a junior in high school and see him playing all those different positions? And can you look at his physical skill set? Can you see, we just had this conversation with Clark Lee. Jeremiah Owusu's 40 time isn't blowing you out of the water. But when you watch him play high school basketball and you see how quickly he could cross somebody over and how quickly he could not only jump for height, but how fast he got off the floor, and you saw that twitchiness, that explosion, you knew, okay, that guy's different. So it's not only just watching 50 plays on a huddle highlight, it's watch him play basketball, watch him at track. There are literally things like with a big guy, when he gets up, if he's on the ground, what's he look like when he gets up? Does he get up in sections? Then he's probably not a very fluid athlete.
Sounds like me.
If you see a 285-pounder jump up off the ground, so all these little things that we learn through experience are part of the evaluation process. To something as simple as, Why did we think Tariq Bracy, who was primarily an offensive player in high school, why did we think he could play corner? Well, we watched him in spring football and saw him backpedal and change direction. But Mike Elko loved the fact that Tariq was a center fielder in baseball. He could track the ball. He was used to running and tracking the ball as it was coming in. Those things matter, and you kind of learn those things through experience. Projecting their personalities, that's everything, man. That is communication, getting to know the people around them, watching their social media. It's asking the right questions and being willing to listen to the answers. There's too often in recruiting, we just vomit out our pitch as quickly as we can. And we can. It's just got to be give and take. It's relationship driven. We have to listen to what they're saying, because often they're giving us the answers. We just got to be willing to hear them.
Coach Kelly talked about the other sports too. I honestly never thought, at least that you guys were putting so much into that. But when I think of football, I guess a lot of people don't start playing football until after they've maybe started playing other sports. So
Sure.
A lot of their athletic ability must be developed early on in those other sports. Have you always looked, since you've gotten into football, at the way players play other sports and let that educate your evaluation process?
Of course. I mean, we are looking for as much information as we can get. And a guy at track practice, even not a meet, just watching him at practice, that is information. And we need to gather as much of it as possible, because in the end, we're making an investment. How smart of an investment are we making? This is no different than if I gave you $300,000 and said, I want you to make it. That's what we're doing here. That's the value of a 4-year scholarship at Notre Dame. Yeah. So if I gave you $300,000 and said, I want you to go invest this and make sure that you're not wasting it away, you're going to want as much information as you can get. That's the same thing that we're doing. The other part of this thing too is it speaks to their mentality. I want the guy who wants to shoot the three-pointer to try and win the game. I want the guy that says, hey, we need to qualify for district here in track. I'm going to run the anchor. I want the guy that goes from being an offensive lineman to throwing the shot put. I just think there's a competitive nature that we're trying to find. And in this day and age, that might be as big an evaluation as anything else is in this day and age of recruiting and social media and constant attention, who really loves to compete? Who really loves the process, as opposed to the attention that comes along with all of this?
Another thing I heard from Coach Kelly you touched on is he wants people that embrace the spotlight at Notre Dame, because you guys are on national TV every game. You're on broadcast TV every home game and a lot of road games. I asked him this, I'll ask you, how do you identify, you mentioned like they take the big shot late maybe, but are there other things that when you engage with a kid, hey, this kid, he wants to be in the spotlight. He wants the pressure, and he wants sometimes the negative stuff that can come with not performing in the spotlight?
There's wanting it and handling it.
Okay, you're right.
Two different things. I think you watch the way they carry themselves in competition. Do they shy away from the big moment? Too, the other thing we got to figure out is it the guy that loves being on the walk at Notre Dame and high-fiving every fan, or is it the guy that in the clutch moment will go out and handle it? A guy that pops into my mind, like, this was never too big for Drew Tranquil. It was. Here's a better example that our fans can probably relate to more easily. When I was recruiting a punter last year, not only did I know we were going to have somebody that had the physical ability to replace Tyler Newsome, I also knew that we're going to have a freshman that was ready to play and that could handle our schedule, our visibility, our stadium, our fans. Jay Bramblett, I thought, did a terrific job for a true freshman. Jay was not the most physically gifted punter that I evaluated. He's in the top 5, but he was by far the most mentally and emotionally prepared to perform at our place as a freshman. And that's part of the evaluation process.
How'd you identify that? Like when you talked to him, what did he do that said this guy can handle it?
He was the pitcher on the baseball team.
Okay.
He hit a home run in a big moment to advance them in the playoffs. He played quarterback in high school. He had the ball in his hand in crucial moments. I loved his demeanor. It was never too high, never too low, very even-keeled. Just all those intrinsic things that you're looking for. He checked all those boxes and felt like, okay, he's physically gifted enough, but all those other things are going to make him, what I believed, give him the tools to succeed as a freshman. And I would look at Jay's freshman year and say that was successful. He was a shade under 40-yard average with a bunch of balls inside the 20, and we, because of his hang time and those things, we less than 4 yards per return, and that stuff doesn't happen if the guy can't handle it.
Being so involved with special teams, you ever try to sneak a few extra punters into the recruiting class, or maybe a couple kickers here and there? Hey, coach, we need 3 kickers in this class. Trust me.
I can't get the scholarships, but I'm wearing people out with preferred walk-ons. That I can assure you.
Something else you talked about, which has to, at least I would think, is one of the biggest changes in recruiting over the course of, let's just say, the last 2 decades, is social media. You said you want to follow these kids on social media and see what they're putting out, because it can be revealing. I mean, what people put out online reveals something about them. How has that changed your approach to recruiting as that's become more and more prevalent? What do you have to do, and what do you look for when you're evaluating someone's social media presence?
Well, we're trying to find out what kind of brand are they trying to build, and maybe we're giving them a little too much credit in terms of what they're thinking about. But when we're really engaged with a prospect in the recruiting process, we're going to talk about these things. And often something silly or stupid will go out there and you will say, all right, kiddo, listen, you need to grow up here a little bit. It's time to change your thinking. You got to remember. And guys will adjust and they'll learn. And we need to remember that we're dealing with young people. But there are some guys that don't adjust and don't learn. And they're telling you something there. I mean, I've been at a place where a young man put a picture of himself on the hood of a car with a gun and a wad of money. Like, what message are you sending? Mm-hmm. And we've not dealt with scenarios that off the wall here, but there are times that we see things on social media that raise an eyebrow and you got to ask about. And sometimes you'll get a good answer and you can move on from it. It's a part of the puzzle, right? It's a part of the piece. What kind of language does a guy use when he's putting stuff out socially? Like, I'll tell guys all the time that these kids will retweet something and will have an expletive in it, but coach, I retweeted it.
Right. It's not me. Yeah.
You think I know that?
Yeah.
I see your name and I see that stuff next to it. So it's an education process, but it also speaks to maturity level. And we're not, keep in mind now, we know who we're dealing with. Are they immature beyond the norms of their peers? And sometimes that stuff can be revealed through social media.
Something that always interests me is that these classes that you guys bring in are usually 20 plus players. And as you approach them, you're going to tell them all the things Notre Dame can do for them, which, you know, there's a handful both on the football field and off of it. But the fact of the matter is some guys are going to get recruited. They're going to have big football dreams, and they might not play as much as they want to. They might not have the football career that they dreamed of or feel that they were promised in this process. How do you guys manage when you're approaching someone, telling them all the things you can accomplish here without misleading them about, you know, this is going to still fall on you. It's going to come down to you. How do you, because it can be, I think, tempting, I would assume, to be like, we're going to give you the world. When in reality, you can't give all 85 scholarships the world in their time here.
No, and in fact, I would tell you that we are very, very open and honest that, hey, this is a meritocracy. Now, when you say that to a freshman, they get excited because they know that Coach Kelly in his 10 seasons has proven if you're a freshman and you beat out an older player, you will play. There is no, hey, he's a senior, so we owe it to him. Like, we have a track record here where if you can help us win as a freshman, you will play, but you have to earn it. The thing that we tell people all the time is we're not going to, if any coach promises a recruit playing time, he's lying to them. He's lying to them. And it's disrespectful. Because in the end, our livelihoods depend on putting out the best 22 players. Right. And if you're not one of the best 22 and I put you out there anyway, I'm putting my livelihood at stake. So in the end, promising playing time is ridiculous. The only thing that we can promise is the opportunity. And we do promise that. We promise them, hey, if we need you to win, you will play. And we have a track record to prove that.
What is it like, just a little bit off topic, but I'm always interested in talking to coaches about this. What is it like having, like you said, your livelihood dependent on the performance and evolution and determination of 18 to 22-year-olds?
When you think about it that way, it's horrible. This is a wonderful profession. Yeah. It is a wonderful calling. The fact that we can develop these relationships and, in my opinion, still impact young lives. And I know it happens because I've been lucky enough to reap that reward. I mean, I know for a fact that we can help change lives. The business part of it can get funky sometimes, with how the jobs turn over. But that's the world that we live in, right? We get paid pretty well. We get paid pretty well because we can be fired at the drop of a hat. My wife complains about stability all the time. Doesn't complain. We talk about it.
Right.
But, there'd be a whole lot more stability in being a history teacher, but life wouldn't be as fun. So,
with your job in particular, I mean, being in charge of recruiting, I mean, it sounds overwhelming to me. What is maybe the toughest part of your job? You're also obviously coaching on the field too. There's a lot to manage between players that you're trying to get here and players you're trying to work with while they're here. Just for you in particular, what is the part of your job that at times feels, geez, this is the thing that is the toughest thing for me to manage?
Well, first of all, I don't do all of it because I'm a coordinator. My job is to make sure that we stay organized and on task. And the toughest thing for me is probably when we don't have a consensus, and that we have to really hammer it out. And it's not easy to speak truth to power, but my role here is to tell Coach Kelly how I feel about a particular situation or player, and then eventually he will decide what is best for our program. And when that happens, no matter where we were on the issue, when the head coach makes the decision, he's got 51% of the vote, then we get on board. But it's my job. It's my job to be his eyes and ears in the recruiting operation. It's my job to keep us organized, to keep us on task, to keep us addressing needs and making sure that our roster does not get out of balance. And frankly, there are times it works out well as a special teams coordinator too, because I don't have a dog in the fight. I can go to the offense and go to the defense and have hard conversations because they know I'm not trying to favor one side or the other. I'm Switzerland here. I get, I coach the whole football team.
Yeah, you just want 3 punters.
Yeah. So when we don't have a consensus, when we're working through something, that can be difficult sometimes.
I want to talk more about that because I think in any workplace that can be tricky when there is a boss and it's their word, but you've got a really strong opinion. And I'm sure, like you said, other coaches, they have vested interests. Defensive coordinator wants this guy and he gets overruled or we're going this direction. How do you guys ensure that you're able to fully move on and fully commit when you may have felt really passionate? Because that can happen in any workplace. Hey, boss, we got to do this. I firmly believe this. And at the end of the day, it's his or her call. I've got to respect that and move on. But I've been in that position where it's tough. Like I don't want to let go of what I thought was the right call. And if it doesn't pan out, I really then want to come back and revisit it.
It's done on the front end. It's done when you bring in the right people who understand that we want opinions. We don't want yes men, but eventually we're going to reach a decision. And at that point, the team is more important than the individual. We're going to listen to everybody's opinion, but there comes a point where we can't go round and round anymore. We've got to make a decision. When the head coach makes the decision, then everybody's got to get on board. Now, listen, do we not poke at each other? Do we not throw darts? I'll be the first to admit we'll be watching a game on television and some guy that we passed on makes a play. And, oh, hey, by the way, did you see our guy last night? Yeah, it wasn't good enough for us. But he's, but that's what we do, right? There's a sense of humor to it. There's some needling. And look, things will get heated too. I mean, we are all alpha personalities. We are locked up together during the season for 85 to 90 hours a week. People get emotionally charged. I mean, but in the end of the day, when you walk out of the room and close the door, that stuff's behind us.
How much are you involved with the people throughout the university that help with whether it's academic services, compliance, Are you involved with them throughout
Sure.
this process?
Yep.
Just how valuable are they? What do they help you guys with the most as you're trying to determine, can this person fit what we need here at Notre Dame, what it takes to get through the academic rigors? What's your involvement like with them, and how valuable are they to help you in this process?
Well, first of all, it's a partnership. It's a partnership with our admissions office, certainly. And there's a lot of dialogue there. And Dave Poloquin does a great job in terms of the liaison between football, and because that liaison cannot be a coach. A coach is too emotionally invested. That liaison has a very difficult job. They've got to manage all those personalities. But it's a great partnership, and it's one that has developed over years because Coach Kelly has proven that he's going to bring the right people here. Our graduation rate and our success tells you that we're bringing the right people in there. So there comes some give and take, right? They develop trust in us. We develop trust in them. And there are times when they will come to us and say, hey, listen, we think this is going to be a struggle, and we have to be willing to hear that. And there are times that we will go to them and say, we have a firm belief, and here is why. So it's truly a partnership, and it's a pivotal cog in this whole wheel. In terms of our relationships on campus, compliance is great. Yeah. Although, to be very honest with you, compliance doesn't have much to worry about because we don't swim in the murky end of the pool. We just don't. Our relationships with academic support are incredibly invaluable because we can talk about the power of this degree, but we're not experts in it. The academic people are experts in it. And then frankly, there are so many relationships across this campus. I think of Professor Chris Stevens and the amount of times that he will sit and meet with a prospect. Like those interactions, Jack Swarbrick will meet with our prospects one-on-one if we ask. Father John. I mean, recruiting truly is a collective effort campus-wide, and without these relationships, we would not be nearly as effective as we are. The other part of this process on campus that people don't realize is the amount of support staff help that we get. You talk about, this is a pretty expansive recruiting operation. We have an entire office dedicated to this. You have Riley Fangman, Jazz Smith, Aaron Carney, our graphics people, Matt Taylor, Ian McFarland. So there's a whole army of people behind the scenes. I mean, Joy McCausland, who is an administrative assistant for us, often she might be the first person a prospect and their family sees when they walk into our building. Well, that touch is important to us. Yeah. Every touch is important to us. And there's a whole incredibly important group of ambassadors that are students on campus here, St. Mary's Holy Cross, who are hosting these families and escorting these prospects through campus. And those relationships, you'd be surprised at how valuable they are and how a mom might come back and ask for the same ambassador on their second and third trip back. And we try and match geography, or we might try and match academic interests. But we have this entire army of people that are just trying to make sure that we have positive interaction after positive interaction. And frankly, there's no one piece of this machine that's more valuable than the other, short of Coach Kelly. Everything that we do matters as we develop these relationships.
I asked the same question to Coach Kelly. I'll tell you his answer after, but I don't want to influence your answer because I'd be interested to hear what you have to say. I said, is there one rule within recruiting that if you could change, you would change, because it might help Notre Dame, but in general, it would just help college football recruiting as a whole be an easier process, a more fair process? What's the change that if you had your way, you'd say, hey, if we change this, it would help us and maybe everybody out quite a bit?
Oh, geez. That stuff is always constantly evolving and changing. I'm at the point now where I think we ought to be able to have contact in spring of their junior year. All we're doing, we're having guys. You can technically bring a young man in on an official visit in April of his junior year before you're actually able to go out to have an evaluation. And we're just encouraging the bending of the rules. And The whole thing is just craziness to me anyway. I wish, frankly, we could just slow it down a little bit, but that horse is out of the barn and sprinting. So, yeah, that's not going to happen.
He wants the bump, the bump rule, where he wished that head coaches during that period could just have contact.
Because, he and I just said the exact same thing.
Yeah, he pretty much said the same thing in different words. So I think it makes sense. You guys are on the same page there. I guess the last thing I'd be curious about, one thing Coach Kelly said is that when he has 2 visits with players, or 2 times he talks to them in general in this process. One is the first time maybe on campus unofficially where he introduces himself, says, here's what we're all about. And then one where he's called it closing time. And I just heard him say closing time. I thought, okay, I want to know what that pitch is like for you, whether it's as a group or you guys have identified it. What is the pitch? I mean, I'm a prospective athlete. I'm thinking about Notre Dame, but I've got some other choices too. What's separating this place when you're trying to tell me that this is the right fit? You want me here. Why should I go?
Okay, so that's a great question. And here's the reality of it. If we're doing it right, the close is different for every kid.
Okay.
If we're just going out here with a cookie cutter, here's who we are, here's what makes us different, we'll attract some guys, but we're only attracting the guys that wanted us the whole time anyway. What we have to do a good job of, which I think we've evolved here over the last 3 or 4 years, is on the front end, knowing exactly what it is that is important to the family and that is important to the young man, and tailoring our message to meet their needs as best we can. Why can we pull from 29 different states? First and foremost, it's because of the academic profile of the university. But there are some people that are more attracted to the fact that the place is faith-based. There are some people that are attracted to the fact that you can play in front of 80,000 fans and 5 million on television, but when you go to class on Monday, there's going to be 18 kids in the classroom. So it's more about understanding. I mean, it comes down to positions. Why wouldn't an offensive lineman be attracted to this place?
Yeah, at this point, yeah.
Why wouldn't a tight end be attracted to this place? So it literally, if we're doing it right, the recruit and the other evolution in our recruiting process is that the days of that guy's their recruiting superstar, those days should be over. This is a collaborative, multiple people involved with every prospect. So if we're doing this right, when we go in for the last contact before we're going to sign a guy, it's Coach Kelly, it's probably a position coach, and maybe one other person. In a lot of cases, that's been me because I'm kind of all over the place. And we are teeing up Coach Kelly throughout the recruiting process about what's important to this family so that when he goes in there, we're not just presenting a presentation that we've presented 100 times. It's, hey, here's what's important to this family, and here's how we're going to tailor our message here to try and close it off.
Thank you. This was incredibly revealing. I appreciate you taking the time. I learned a lot, so thank you.
No, I appreciate it.
You have been listening to an official Notre Dame Athletics podcast presented by Fighting Irish Media.